Hi, I'm Patrick Smith, and today you're watching episode 9 of the Mountains and Leadership podcast. Mark, how are you doing today?
I'm doing all right. How are you doing? Besides your voice, my goodness, dude.
I'm riding the struggle bus today.
Right.
I'm hopped up on warm drink here and throat lozenges, so we'll get through it.
Yeah. Well, a lot of good stuff to cover today. Like, man, it's they've done a lot of research on this.
Yeah, so today's podcast, we're going to call it Reading Between the Lies. Not reading between the lines, reading between the lies. And application to business. And so, you're going through life and...
It's not just application to business.
It's everything.
Like family parenting, business. Like, you need to know all that stuff.
Yeah.
Like, really?
Well, but okay, so the idea would be being able to tell when you're being lied to. But then also, what do you do about that when you realize you are being lied to? Sometimes you don't need to speak on something. You may realize you're being lied to. You don't need to say a word. Other times it might be good to, make decisions about, hey, you're lying to me. And that's good in business to know when and when not to do that. Obviously in life as well.
Right.
Pick your battles, especially with your kids. But
is this a sword that I need to fall on right now?
Yeah. Yeah, so Mark, I'll kick it off like this. So do you have any examples? I'm talking like major lies that you caught, whether that be like from our government, from in business, in your time in business, in life. Just throw something out there. What do you have? I want to hear it.
Oh, man. Personal life, man. That's like crazy. I was engaged to a woman that I come to find out she was an exotic dancer and
you didn't know?
and an escort. She let me know she was a dancer when she was 19. She was 37, and then after that, I asked her a couple weeks later. I said, "Did you ever like work as an escort?" She said, "No." But she had her little 3-year-old boy. And then I met baby daddy and I was like, all right, this isn't jiving. Like, what is this story? She finally got mad. She's like, it was for money. I was like, thank you for being honest.
Wow.
That was like,
gosh, man,
that was one of the most extreme that I've run into.
The dating scene these days, Ruth and I are married and we talk about like, we would never want to be out there because there's so much dishonesty and it's about using people and we can get out of them. So this girl has a past. She sells that to you a certain way. And then as it unfolds, you realize, oh, it's not really what she sold me. I can look past it. I'm not going to be shallow. I'm going to move through this with her. And then you start finding out all these other, that, all while you're already engaged. Mm-hmm. Yeah. It's kind of a blessing that you didn't go all the way and get married. Right.
Right.
And find out about all the lies later. That's a big one for people. And I think a lot of people live that every day now. I mean, in the world of the swipe right culture, I mean, it's who knows what you're getting with people.
And I didn't even meet, I met her in person.
So what do you do? What do you do when you catch someone lying to you?
Oh, I typically confront them right away.
Okay. So that's your style.
That's
okay.
My style. I am not a sit back and just like, interesting person. I'm like, you did what? I'm like,
Is that small town Wyoming boy coming out of you?
Yeah, I think so. It's kind of like, sometimes the small town Wyoming boy can sound like a southern black woman. No, you didn't.
Man, I will tell you the way that I handle it is, my answer is it depends. And so if it's in my personal life, I'm more of them. That's interesting. And what I do is I kind of let the lie unfold. I'll play along and they won't know that I can tell that they're lying. And Ruth and I will have these conversations, and I'm not walking around sizing people up all the time, just to be clear, but something kind of hits me in the face. It happens a lot. And Ruth has learned over the years that if I get a sense about somebody, it's spot on and it'll come to fruition. You give it enough time. And what I like to do is I'll debrief with her and I'm like, hey, did you catch that? Did you catch this? And she's like, no, I didn't. Ruth is so good natured. But then I'll compare notes with her and kind of use her as a sounding board. But I'll watch somebody and see where they want to go with the lie, and I'll just kind of play it out. And that lets me know a lot about who I'm dealing with. And I think there's value in that.
Or if you want to deal with them.
Well, and that's right. I mean, I've already, to be clear, the moment that I found out about the lie, I knew instantly that, okay, this person isn't going to be someone long-term in my life. And matter of fact, they're not going to have much access, if any at all. But they don't know that right away.
Right.
And I'll let it play out for a little bit. And then at some point, there's an inflection point, and I'll call it out. A lot of times I may just fade back and not say anything. Speak less, say more. Silence can say a lot, right?
Right.
But I handle my personal life that way. And then business, man, that trust, it's hard because my first question is this person lying, or is it lack of knowledge that comes across dishonest?
Well, they can come across like there are so many different angles, right? Like this, I had no idea about this dark triad. You brought this up today, and I'm like, what in the world? So it's the dark triad, which consists of narcissism. How do you say that?
Machiavellianism.
Machiavellianism. Wow. And psychopathy is related to trust issues and lies due to the manipulative and exploitive behaviors associated with these personality traits.
Yep.
And so I've dealt with narcissists, but the grandiosity, the need for admiration, the lack of empathy,
sense of entitlement. They see themselves as something more than what they are, so they think they're owed more than what
exploited behavior, envy and jealousy, fragile self-esteem. There are a couple that are missing out of here. That's going to be narcissism. It comes from the Greek myth of Narcissus, character who fell in love with himself, right?
Yeah,
with his own reflection. So this is
he stared at himself in a reflection and couldn't take his eyes off himself. That's like a Greek myth or whatever. That's where the name comes from.
So this is the other two things are gaslighting and mirroring, and this
triangulation too.
Triangulation. What is it?
Wait. So what? Okay. So break them down. I start with mirroring because I'm not as familiar with mirroring. Did I say that right?
Mirroring. Yes. So mirroring is when. Sorry, my knuckles just got picked up on that cracking up. This is right. One of those. It's like, yeah. So let's say somebody walks in. They pick up on your personality right away, right? A narcissist will do that, and they will start acting like you back towards you to give you comfort.
Like a form of flattery?
Not necessarily just flattery, but they start like I'll be okay. So the first date I had with the ex-fiance, she walks in my house and was like, I had Christian music playing. It was during COVID. I invited her over for dinner, and she heard the music play. She goes, "Oh, I love this music." And I said, "Well, yeah, I go to such and such church." And she goes, "Oh, really? My dad was professor at this Christian college." I was like, "No kidding." So she started like right then and there. She picked up on that immediately. Mm-hmm. And she's like, I was just thinking about going back to that church you go to. I've gone to it before. I was like, "Oh, wow, really?" And then she like went through all the steps, getting through the, volunteering in the children's church, like really making, like disarming me to get there. But on the other side.
So she uses mirroring as a step one to disarm you. Mm-hmm. And then the rest of it kind of comes in as she gets you comfortable.
Right, exactly.
It's like so would you equate that to like a frog in hot water? It's the temperature slowly increases over time.
The water was cold and you didn't notice the heat coming up.
Yeah.
And like by the time you notice it's so hot, you're like I was. It was not fun to deal with. Yeah. Let's put it that way. But then, that's where the gaslighting comes in, right? So the gaslighting is when you try and confront something and they try and make you feel like you are making it up. That's not the way it happened. That's just your perception. That's not the way it is. And that's the gaslighting is one of the most exploitive ways and manipulative ways of lying that a narcissist has.
Well, and so I mentioned triangulation. I think that triangulation opens the door for gaslighting, because so the way that you beat gaslighting is if you can corroborate the story with multiple sources and everyone's saying something different than the person gaslighting, you can shut them down and they lose power. But the thing is, typically when they do that gaslighting, they've already committed themselves to a strategy called triangulation, which is I will enter your frame and your social dynamic, and I'm going to see who you're closest to and who has the most weight or credibility around you. And I'm going to engage them, and I'm going to gain that credibility and become a friend there, so that when there is the conflict and I do gaslight you, the other person has a hard time delineating between reality themselves, because they don't want to, they feel like they're torn between two friends.
Well, and she did that by sending an email to the pastor of our church.
See, so
the church I was going to.
When you're dealing with somebody at the core of this is just dishonesty, reading between the lies. It's dishonest to gaslight, and it's really manipulative to triangulate, and the mirroring is a form of manipulation, it sounds like, as well. I hadn't heard of that one.
And then they have the flying monkeys.
So they're minions.
Right.
Well, and that's a part of the triangulation, kind of.
Well, but the flying monkeys are everybody they're giving, like everybody around them that they're giving their narrative to, to spread the narrative. So that the more people that are spreading this narrative or speaking this narrative, the more truthful it is, or the more real that is, instead of like people saying, well, there's three sides to every story, his, hers, and the truth. Let's, we can talk to Mark and figure this out.
Can I push back on that saying for a minute? I want to, because sometimes the truth is the truth, and somebody's telling the truth, and they get told, well, there's three sides to every story, your truth, their truth, and then the actual truth. It's like, sometimes it's like, no, like this is
who decides
what
the truth is. Yeah, I know, right?
Well, and you ever heard the word postmodernism? My truth, your truth. Your truth is correct, my truth is correct, even though there might be a contradiction. In fact, that's not accurate. Facts are facts, and you can anchor the truth in facts and move from there and get the truth, right?
And most of the time it's just opinions, and opinions come from perception.
Yeah, it's a perception thing, but see, that's where your narcissist can really wreak havoc in someone's life, because they can change. If they don't have the power over you, it's kind of a known thing. They change how other people view you, so the perception changes. And the way that you defeat triangulation is just, it's sad, but you almost have to disconnect from everyone in that dynamic and start over. Sometimes it's hurtful.
Oh, it is.
And if you've ever been through that, it's pretty bad. But
well, and it's funny that the narcissist, narcissists, the Greek god or whatever they want to call him, character, fell so in love with his own reflection, right? Because one of the key indications, and I'm not calling everybody a narcissist, but social media is creating so many narcissists right now. It's not even funny.
Well, and you just hit on something I was going to touch on, is you hear people say, oh, they're a narcissist, or this person's a narcissist. And it's like, that word gets thrown around flippantly, and I'm sure
they may have narcissistic traits.
Well, most if not everyone displays some form of narcissistic traits, period. Like we all do, in varying degrees. But a true narcissist, they don't, first of all, a narcissist doesn't know they're a narcissist. They're just driven by, this grandiose view of themselves. And it stems from a massive insecurity in their past or something of that nature. And so they feed off the power of other people. And the brother of that is Machiavellianists. So the difference between a narcissist and a Machiavellianist is that a narcissist doesn't know they're a narcissist, but a Machiavellianist knows what they're doing, and they're very calculated. And if you go interview some of the most prominent criminals that have gone to prison, and then they come back out again to enter society and pick up where they left off, per se.
They were very intentional about it.
They go get their PhD in criminology in prison, basically by going and reading the book. It's called The Prince. and it was written by a guy. So let me see. His name was Machiavelli. He was an Italian Renaissance political philosopher and diplomat, and he wrote the book The Prince in 1513. It's a play on political power between different countries, and he basically wrote it as advice to these world leaders on how to maneuver, how to play chess, how to outwit, how to outsmart. And I would say, the context in which we've brought forth the idea of like a narcissist or Machiavellianist. Narcissist, that's bad. A Machiavellianist can actually be good. They can use the skill set for something very good. Like, for example, let's say I'm a military special operations guy overseas, and my job is to find this terrorist who is killing women and children and blowing up soldiers left and right. So I'm trying to save lives.
So let's say Jack Ryan.
Oh,
right.
If you want to go that route, yeah. So I could do something over here to have these people react this way, so that they will give me access to other people over here. I may not really be this person here, but I maneuver in a way as if I am. And it gets me over here to where I need to be so that I can get close to the terrorists and kill them, because they're bad people and you want to stop something, from perpetuating further. So you can use a Machiavellian tactics for good. I will tell you in my own mind, I'll give you some of my playbook as a person, but I don't like bullies and people who think they're something tough when they're real, they're tougher than they really are. And they just kind of like lord that over other people, puff their chest out. They're kind of arrogant. I will just pull them out of themselves and play with them like a string puppet. And it's because people like that hurt people. They're hurtful. And it's a protection mechanism for the people around me, my friends, my relationships, the people I love and care about, my own children, my family. And, I had a kid that was, talking to my daughter, my oldest, and he tried to play some of the stuff, and I just went full-blown Machiavellianist on him, and I shut it down. And then eventually it culminated to me directly calling him out in front of his mom and dad, in front of other people who had witnessed it and corroborated the story. And the mom even tried triangulation to inhibit him a little more or be a stumbling block for him. And it culminated into a direct confrontation. And by the time I was done, I had 6 other families that had witnessed everything that this kid was doing. And to give you a glimpse into that, he was actually his parents had encouraged him to pull my daughter aside and share his struggles about pornography and other stuff with her.
And these are high school students.
Yeah, well, and I was very upset about it, but he was using it as a noble thing, like, hey, I struggle with this, and we're talking, and I just want to tell you that out of respect, when really it was kind of a decoy to get her talking about those things with him, and I don't want my daughter talking to him about that. So I recognized that for what it was very quickly, and I maneuvered around it, and it culminated into some pretty frustrating things for us, but we worked through it. And being a Machiavellianist, you can protect people and your own kids, right? And so we talked about that last week on Light and Darkness, that episode that we went through with child trafficking. You had a story where you protected your kids, and I don't know if you were necessarily using Machiavellianism, but the idea is still there. And so Machiavellianists, this is out of the dark triad. You've got the narcissist, the Machiavellian types, and then you've got the psychopaths. And so the Machiavellianists are my favorite, and I really love history. I love World War II history, and I love history about gangsters and mobsters out of New York, Chicago, all that. If you ever watch how these guys moved and did things in the street, when you can use Machiavellianism as a negative thing or a manipulative thing that's hurtful, is you can pose as someone trying to help someone. I can go make $500 million selling heroin on the street as a drug dealer or a mobster, and then I go buy a big 18-wheeler full of frozen turkeys on Thanksgiving, and I drive down the streets of Harlem or wherever, and I hand out turkeys. Well, guess what? Everyone in the community,
you're the local hero.
Yeah, I'm a local hero. Everyone loves me. And while the police are around the corner in a surveillance van thinking, man, you dirtbag, nobody's going to out me. No one's going to snitch on me, right? But I'm the problem in this society. I'm the one injecting the drugs onto the streets and hurting people, right? So it's
very calculated.
It's very calculated. And if you have somebody that is a evil person and they're a Machiavellianist, man, that's some dark stuff. They can cause a lot of damage, and you need to protect against that. And so having discernment and being able to counteract that with your own ability to go into that role, that's important. One really cool concept that they talk about in the book, The Prince, is he gives this idea of these three countries, and one of them is a bigger country than the other. The third country is the one kind of in the middle between the two. And so the two on either end are warring, right? And they both go to the middle guy and they say, or the middle country, and say, whose side are you on, right? We have an option. You can say, I'm on your side, side A, or I'm on side B, or I'm not going to side with anyone. Which option do you think is the best? Because if you side with one and they lose, you're culpable in that. Now you've bought yourself into some bad stuff, and your country's going to be oppressed by that country that won. They're the stronger country, right? So what's the right answer? Do you know?
I would say neutral.
That's what you would think. What they say is pick a side, right or wrong. Because if you go neutral, the side that needed your help that lost is not going to like you because you let them lose. The side that won is going to see that you didn't take their side. And now that they've won and they've got control of the other country and now they're stronger, they're not going to respect you. And so they're going to come after you next. So it's a lose-lose for you. However, if you pick a side, and let's say option one is you pick the side that loses, well, now you have a side who's sympathetic toward you, even though you both are dealing with this other country. So you still have an ally.
Right.
But if you pick the side that wins, now you're on the winning side, right?
Right.
So the right thing to do would be to pick a side. And that's one of the concepts that they lay out in the Machiavellianist playbook is, if you're a street level enforcer on the, pick a side, make sure what you're doing is calculated, but pick a side. That way you have people backing you up at the end of this thing, right? And that happens in business too. That happens in, friendship circles and things. And sounds like a lot of drama, but it's a skill. It's a skill to have. It's kind of interesting. So,
well, and then the third one here is the psychopathy or sociopathy.
Why don't you cover that one?
Like I've done after that relationship, I did a lot of research on this. Mm-hmm. So sociopathy. Okay, the one thing that all three of these, all four, let's just psychopathy and sociopathy, are not the same thing, but they're both very hard. But the thing that all of them have in common is lack of empathy. Yep. That is the core root to all four, I'll say, of them.
But you might see a narcissist or a Machiavellianist display empathy because it's a manipulative tactic.
Yep. It's just manipulation.
That's right.
Oh, they'll even get the tears going.
Yeah.
But it's not.
It's like real. I'm not going to cry to compete with you in this argument. You're crying and everyone feels sorry for you, but I'm not going to do that.
Right. But it's a sympathy tactic. But so sociopathy and psychopathy, let's just put them on a continuum, right? You cannot have sociopathy. You can't be a sociopath or a psychopath without being a narcissist. Just doesn't happen. It automatically comes with those traits, right? And they've done, and there are 7 guideposts for being a sociopath, and I'll just put it this way: if your dancers down at the strip club will exhibit almost all 7 of them.
Really?
Yes.
Why? Why is that?
That's just because of what they do. Like that's if they're okay with that lifestyle. If they're like that by getting into that lifestyle, by doing that, they're willing to they are willing to manipulate men for money. They are experts at it, and that is exactly why they're drawn to it. Like, and they don't even they don't care about it. Let's go look at some of the websites that are up right now, right? Where people can be their own employee from a camera.
Yeah.
Okay. That's again, they can justify it. They have a nice car. They don't care as long as there are people feeding their bank account. They don't care. And it is just, it's hard.
And man, I don't know.
So
I don't know that I when I look back in my life, I can recall people that fall in the other two categories. Like, man, they were more narcissistic, or this person seemed very calculated, but they kind of knew what they were doing. So they were kind of more of a Machiavellian type.
But a psychopath and a sociopath. So the difference between a sociopath and a psychopath is literally the only difference is that the psychopath will actually do damage. They will hurt you. They will kill you. A sociopath just wants to manipulate you, control you, and get their needs met. Right. Mm-hmm. But both of them, you cannot have sociopathy or psychopathy without narcissism. And all of them lack empathy. And it is when you are, I grew up in a really hard life, but I've become like, God's really softened my heart. The word says, I'll take that heart of stone and give you a heart of flesh.
Yeah.
But when you get that heart of flesh and you become more empathetic to the world and to everything going on around you, then you are prey. You are fresh meat for a sociopath, for a narcissist especially.
I don't know, man. Do you feel like
you have to guard yourself?
But you're not okay. So I hate when people put me in a bucket. Don't put me in a bucket. If you ever want to like rub me wrong, put me in a bucket. This is gonna be hypocritical kind of, but I'm gonna bucket some things out. Okay, you've got people who were sheltered, and you've got people who were not sheltered in life, right?
Right.
If you're not sheltered, you may be not sheltered to varying degrees. So maybe there's some sub buckets. But let's say you're on the extreme side of that. You're not naive, right? But you may still be a gentle person. And I will tell you right now, my children run to me with adoration. I love them, but I can do great damage physically to a grown man if I have to. Mm-hmm. And I'm not naive. And I want my kids to stay naive as long as they can without it being a detriment to them. So while you say, okay, yeah, my heart is softened, you cannot unknow the things that you know now that you know them. And sometimes I wish I could unknow things that I know because because of the lack of peace it brings. When you see something from like 500 miles away and no one else sees it and they just think you're paranoid, but you've had enough life experience when you can see it coming, like a year or two down the road, it manifests and no one even connects the dots to the time you called it out. So I guess what I'm saying is, yeah, you have a softer heart, but you can't walk away from the lack of naivety that you once had as maybe a kid, right?
Right.
So where do you fall with that? Like you can't just say, well, I have a gentle heart now. Like you can't,
no,
you still can't know that.
I have a heart that's more empathetic. Like that's what I'm saying is
fair.
Like,
I get that. That's
it's
fair.
like, I can feel more of what, what people are going through. I can sense that. I can, it is that way. But there was a meme I had that, was exactly that. It says sometimes you have to remind people sometimes you have to remind people who you used to be so they respect who you are now.
I'm a firm believer that you teach people how to treat you by what you're willing to put up with. I will add to what you said. I think I'm understanding what you said. And I have a quote on our website. We're talking about our nonprofit to help children get adopted, and one of the things there's a quote by Charles Haddon Spurgeon, and it says, better to be deceived 1,000 times than to live a life of suspicion. I think that's how it goes. Better to be deceived 1,000 times than to live a life of suspicion, because it steals your joy.
It does.
It steals your joy, and
wholeheartedly.
And so we've had this conversation before about people that are realist versus just being negative. And, I think we're bumping up around that. And so in the spirit of not being negative, you want to have joy.
Right. That's a gift of the Spirit, right?
Yeah. But if I had the ability, ignorance is bliss. If I had the ability to just be ignorant of things that I'm no longer ignorant about, I would opt out of the ignorance because I would want to know. That's how I'm wired. What do you say about that?
I think we should probably just take the angle of being suspicious for a little while here while we're doing this podcast.
Yeah,
we're gonna go into Project Mockingbird next. I'm not sidestepping that question because I don't want you to think that at all. But I'm just saying that like I have a hard time. I've gotten to the point in my life I'm suspicious of everybody, and I don't trust anybody, and that's why. This Project Mockingbird you brought up, I was blown away when I read this. Our CIA in the 50s and 60s, they were doing an experiment through television and everything else, through media. Mm-hmm. Oh, wow, media. Propaganda through media. Who's ever thought of that? And that was in the 50s and 60s.
How bad do you think it is today compared to then?
Oh, it's so bad. It's so bad. So in May of 2008, I decided to get my real estate license. And that was the worst time. Like if anybody knows anything about the mortgage meltdown and real estate and how many companies went out of business, and it caused a worldwide economic crisis, right? In 2008 and 2009. So I'm selling real estate at this point in time, but I was able to become top 10% in my market in my board. And the reason was, and people asked me how I did that. I said I took the Mythbusters approach. And the Mythbusters approach, if you've ever watched that, is I reject your reality and substitute my own. I didn't read the newspaper. I didn't watch the news. I didn't listen to any of it.
So there goes the ignorance piece. So like you, in a sense, you said, I am going to remain ignorant of all that. I don't want to care about that. I'm focused on what I'm doing.
Right.
There's value in that.
Absolutely.
100%.
So I didn't buy into the propaganda. I didn't. Like, okay, there are basic principles in business and real estate. There are people going through all the stages in life that are life changes that dictate a real estate move, job loss, new job, new kids, divorce, marriage, death in the family. All of those things are still happening. Go find where that's happening. Don't listen to okay, like people tell me today, I'm a mortgage lender. That's what I do every single day. Well, what are the rates doing? The rates are going to be what they're going to be. You marry the property, you date the rate. When the rates are in a better position, you're going to refinance just like everybody else did 2 and 3 years ago while we were going through COVID and the rates were down below 3%. That's what they were in a position to do that because they were in their home. Let's get you in a position to do that. That's speaking truth. It is the truth. It's actually using facts, but it's if you can afford the home, let's find you a home you can afford, get you into a home. The cost of waiting is greater than the cost of getting into a home right now. And the other thing is like during that whole thing during COVID, people were willing to pay $50,000 for an appraisal gap over their offer if it didn't appraise, but they're not willing to put $25,000 towards a rate buy down to get a more affordable rate on a permanent basis. Makes absolutely no sense, but it's because they're not educated. And why aren't they educated? Because the media does not, it's not bleeding.
It doesn't educate, it sensationalizes.
Right. It's not, if it bleeds, it leads, right? That's a big thing with media. If it bleeds, it leads. And instead of the media giving hope, they want to keep everybody locked down by fear. And that's where I think that we have a lot of government propaganda working through the media. My suspiciousness. That's why I said I'm going to take the angle of suspicion because I don't trust them.
Yeah, I think take the angle of suspicion, but do you can lean into truth and have it steal your joy, and you can lean into truth and have it not steal your joy. Mm-hmm. And what you laid out was a real world example in your career of you leaning into truth. It was still the truth. You weren't you weren't naive in a bubble. And you weren't lying to your clients, but you had a very clear point A to point B. This is what I'm doing. And it worked for you and your joy was there. Mm-hmm. And so, you look at lies And it's like lies everywhere. You know, how could I ever trust anyone? And then you just sort of isolate yourself, and that's no way to live. You do want to be wise. You want to be discerning. You want to make sure that you can read between the lies, right? Which is what we're calling this podcast today.
Exactly.
But, you know, I'll dig into Project Mockingbird in a little more detail just for the audience here. But a lot of people already know about this if you don't know about it. So the Central Intelligence Agency, the CIA, back in the 50s and 60s, they had a project called Project Mockingbird, and they were utilizing the media to push pro-United States propaganda against
anti-communism.
It was anti-communist, which I happen to be an anti-communist.
Anti-socialist, anti-communist.
Yeah, they were pushing, like, it was propaganda, but there were... I would say some things that were just clearly not true that they were putting out there. And I don't agree with lying. I don't want to be lied to by our government, but I'm not naive that, our government would never lie. I mean, look at the last couple years. They shut businesses down over lies and told people they couldn't work and make a living, right? And a lot of that was propaganda, and a lot of it was fear-mongering. And so being able to, think outside the box and think for yourself is really, really valuable, and it's a powerful thing. Project Mockingbird is one of many things that our government has tried to lie to us about. There was another thing under Kennedy where they were wanting to stage a mass murder and blame it on communists so that they could go over and start war, like the whole Bay of Pigs thing and all that.
Oh, wow.
With Russia. And yeah, I mean, there was some crazy stuff there too. And that's a podcast for another day. But
yeah. And you sent me that article yesterday about the Nephilim, the first thing that the troops were going for was when they invaded Iraq was to get DNA.
Yeah.
I want to read more on that. I saw that video. I need to research that more.
I don't know that that's true. I don't know, but it's compelling.
It is very compelling. So again,
I've got some tips from an actual FBI guy that does interviews, forensics interviewing, and he's got 8 tips or ways to spot a liar. And so I'll just run through those. So number 1 is listen more than you speak. And if they are speaking faster and talking louder and their voice is constantly cracking, and then they've got like a repetitive coughing or clearing of throat, it's a delay tactic. It's a delay mechanism. And so when you're more quiet, you ask a very awkwardly heavy, personal, pointed question unexpectedly, and then just let it sit in the room, and you watch somebody squirm.
Well, and then they start talking faster. They like if you're quiet, they start talking faster. They start getting repetitive. They get louder because they're trying to convince you of something.
They're getting no validation for what they're saying, and they can sense it. And there's an insecurity, and in that insecurity, they're seeking to get the validation of what they're saying, and so they begin to talk louder and faster, and kind of like they're trying to explain themselves. So number 2, watch for a change in their behavior. So they'll conveniently have lapses in memory at key points, especially if they were alert earlier in the conversation. So if they're really, really sharp and alert, and then you throw something at them, it's like people are like cups. Whatever they're filled with, when they get bumped unexpectedly, that's what comes out of them. Mm-hmm. You can just sort of watch that play out. So what he's basically saying is watch for those changes in behavior.
I like to say like a sponge. Whatever you've been soaking up when you're under pressure, that's what's going to come out.
That's right. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. They give exaggerated responses, or they speak like very formally. And so all of those things are indicators. And it's important to establish a baseline with the person. So what they'll do is they'll come in and they'll talk and they'll interact with this person. They'll get kind of a baseline, and then they kind of go into the interrogation, and they can see those outliers in behavior, and that's how they're able to denormalize this behavior better. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. Number 3 is ask follow-up questions. If you ask for more information and the person gets really evasive, this could be a sign that they're lying. And if they just won't answer it, it could also mean that they're embarrassed. So if they're hiding something, that they shouldn't have been doing, like, I'm trying to give an example. I saw like a Cops episode back in the day, Bad Boys, what you gonna do? Remember that? This guy gets robbed and he calls the police. He's like, yeah, they robbed from me. Well, he was selling drugs and they robbed him. And so he didn't want to come out with the whole story, right? And that's a part of it. So number 3, ask for follow-up questions. Number 4, be aware if they're using flattery or too many compliments. Some people are nice, but usually when it comes to inmates, compliments mean that they want something. If someone's trying too hard to make a good impression, it means you might have a liar on your hands. They're either not, they're sociopath, Machiavellianist, whatever. Number 5, pay attention to how they say no. So there are 5 ways that someone is saying no that you can tell that they might be lying to you. The first one is saying no and looking in a different direction, like no, or saying no and closing their eyes so they can't look at you because the stress of like the anxiety they have from the lie inside, they can't make eye contact. Saying no after hesitating. So they're having to recall a strategy in their head. They're thinking through, how do I get out of this? And then they say no. Saying no in long, stretched out manner. No. Like, no. Right. Saying no in a sing-song manner, kind of in a flippant, sort of arrogant, kind of flighty way. And so pay attention to how they say no. And that's number 5. And number 6 is surprise them. And it's like bumping the cup full of water. And water spills out when you bump it unexpectedly. Yeah, so...
Ask for the story backward. I like that one.
Yeah, so, we'll get there, but
okay.
Someone who's trying to deceive you will attempt to anticipate your questions in order to control the conversation. Prevent this by asking something that they don't expect. So move the conversation away from what you actually want to know about, and then be like, wham, and then come back real hard and hit them with a question when you were over here. And so it just sort of keeps them off balance. You're a wrestler. You understand how to maneuver people, trick them to move this way, and you really want to throw them that way. So they move where you want them to.
Get them step. Sweet.
That's basically what they're saying. Number 7 is ask for the story backwards. So people who have rehearsed their story, they know that story very well in a particular way.
Oh, that's why they say they know the story forward and backward.
Yeah. So get them to ask it backwards. And then number 8 is build rapport. And so the best way to get around, through a liar is to build rapport. Good cops typically get better results than bad cops. So he says, be empathetic in conversation and you'll get someone to open up far more easily. So that's the 8 ways to tell that you are
according to an FBI agent.
Well, and then I want to finish up with a couple of quick stats here because I thought this was really important. So those little white lies, this is NBC News. They talk about how to tell if someone's lying to you according to researchers. So there's been a lot of research around this. It says, so those little white lies are slipping out more often than you realize. One study found that Americans on average tell about 11 lies per week. A study published in the Journal of Basic and Applied Social Psychology found that 60% of people can't go 10 minutes without lying at least once. And it gets worse. Those that did lie actually told an average of 3 lies during that short conversation. That's crazy.
Wow. That is nuts.
Yeah. And then, so most people lie to protect themselves, to avoid shame or embarrassment or painful emotions. And they don't want to be judged. Right. So, you may run across a person who is a good-hearted, decent person, and they want things to be, they got some stuff that's personal, so they'll lie to kind of protect that or to gloss over it. And yeah,
I don't lie in my business, and so that's where this comes in.
It's interesting stats.
That it is, but I will say that I can empathize with this because I can't. So I find myself avoiding some tough conversations sometimes when I can't get somebody qualified. I'm like, oh,
and you don't want to.
I don't want to burst. I don't want to be that guy. I don't want to burst their bubble, but I have to do it. But oh my goodness, and there's no sugarcoating this. Like there's no getting around it, and it is like because of like I don't want to disappoint somebody. That's my biggest, like one of my biggest weaknesses is not disappointing somebody. And I feel like in my business, if I have to tell somebody I can't solve the problem, I'm disappointing them and I'm being a disappointment. And I just like, that beats me up. That's the hardest thing about my business.
I think the key in knowing these stats is empathy, and you touched on this earlier, but everyone is fallible. If anyone stood up and said, I am perfect all the time, no one's going to like that person, right? There's a sense of being real and authentic that people respect. And while you might, let's say, sugarcoat your answer to your client, there's a sign of empathy and respect in that, that I think goes a long way. And I think there's wisdom in knowing how to navigate that. Do you really call that a lie? I don't know.
No. It's not a lie. I'm just saying, like, I understand why people would lie to get around things is what I'm saying. Like, cause I'm like, oh, this is going to suck. And people don't like being judged. People don't like they don't like to feel like they're inadequate. And I'm like, yeah, I can see this because I don't face this, not a temptation to lie, but it's definitely I avoid certain conversations for a little while I think about it and chew on it. So I can be like, all right, look, you guys are awesome people. We're going to fix this. We're going to I always have a better time calling somebody with bad news if I have a solution, direction that they can go. So I have to chew on it for a while. Yeah. It just sometimes it just kills me.
It's like that 5 Laws for Life and Business podcast that we did. One rule in business, you're working in business. If you've got to bring bad news, see if you can bring the solution with it, right?
Absolutely.
That's effectively what you're saying.
Yeah.
Yeah. So researchers shows our accuracy of distinguishing truth from lies is about 53%. So it's about as accurate as flipping a coin to determine if someone's lying or not. They actually found that.
Well, let's see if you're being honest here.
Yeah. So lies are a thing, but for me, it's like, okay, empathy is huge. And if you lie to me and it's hurting people, it's hurting me, it hurts my business, it hurts someone else's business, or if you're lying and you're hurting people, that's a problem. And I'm not advocating for lying at all, but if my kid shows me a picture and it looks like they just took a black crayon and just scribbled a big black ball on a page, buddy, and they're like, Daddy, this is beautiful. And I'm like, sweetheart, that is gorgeous. I'm going to tell her, yeah, because that's empathy. And that's what they're talking about with the lies. People lying so frequently. I think that's what they're talking about. And I'm going to choose to believe
you can't take a 3-year-old and say, or a 2-year-old and say, yeah, you can do better. That sucks.
You are a dirtbag if you do that to your daughter. I mean,
you can't.
It's cruddy, and so I can think of reasons where, and I don't know. I guess they consider, if you look at the study itself, and like you said, we don't have time to go over that today, but the little tidbit that I will give you is that when they considered it a lie, it was, I don't believe this, but I'm saying it. So. Yeah. And that to me, I can argue against it. I could argue that's not a lie. I could say, no, that is me encouraging and empowering my daughter to go and do well and to get better and to improve, because she's going to see that Daddy really loved that scribbled black ball on that page, and I might hang it in my office right here for the day. And she's so proud because that's got a prominent position in Dad's office. And she comes back with 10 other photos or 10 other pictures. And I'm like, these are even more amazing. And,
right.
And now,
but it's because you're proud of her.
Well, but
for trying.
But I'm not like, necessarily being truthful. And
yeah, but if you're truly proud of her, then you're being truthful.
I know.
Because she's trying.
Well, and I would apply that to business. If you were leading a team, if you're a manager, if you're a boss, and, just think about that concept a little bit. I've worked for all kinds of people. I worked for people that I just dreaded going in to see them every day. Others, I'm like, this person respects me. They believe in me. I am going to work so hard for this person because they encourage me. They make me feel like I can do more. And you know what's funny about that? That's when I've had my best performance bonuses. That's when I've, all of that. And so, you as a business owner, keep that in mind. You as a leader in a team inside corporate America, keep that in mind. You as a father or a mother, keep that in mind. But read between the lies and protect your family, protect your business, protect the people around you. Don't let people lie to you. Don't let people give you a bunch of nonsense.
Yeah.
That's all we're saying.
Like my kids will tell you, dad wears his feelings on his sleeve. There is nothing I can't hide. I like, if I'm pissed, if I'm upset, if I'm you're going to know it. It like comes out of me because I just have those expressions. My kids be like, oh, dad's pissed.
Yeah.
Yeah, but there's no sugarcoating that stuff, right? And like, how to spot a fake smile. Like I was reading through all this stuff, right? And it's just like, there are so many. If I'm smiling because I want to smile. I cannot just force a smile. I can't. I just don't get it. Like,
yeah.
I'm like, you want me smiling right now? I ain't smiling.
You've pushed on me before for being like too serious or like negative, but I'll tell you something, man. Being that guy that can just go quiet with a stone face and just watch stuff play out, like people don't know how to take that sometimes, and they reveal more about themselves than what they would have.
Well, and that's the nervousness we're talking about, right?
Yeah, it's a protection mechanism, and they talk about the nonverbal signs. Communication's roughly, I think it's 80% nonverbal, and the FBI tactics that they showed, said don't say as much, and so. I've been accused of being like more stern or more like look like I'm mad or angry. At times it's just like my wheels are turning and I'm doing that back and forth and but yeah, man, I think that there's a lot of value in really understanding how to read how to weed stuff out, how to read between the lines and really understand what people are saying, what's true and what's not. Again, just to reiterate as we're closing up here, but it's a good way to protect your family. It's a good way to empower and encourage your teams. It's a good way to, just in general, like, it's a good spot check for yourself too.
Yep, it is.
Yeah,
it is. So, all right. Well, thanks, Pat. This has been fun. I love doing these every week. Next week, guys, tune back in because we're actually going to go over what our business is next week and what we're pushing for. And we want to bring you up to speed on the real estate market, state of the market, kind of give everybody an update and come up with some really creative solutions.
People across the U.S., they're saying, oh, the sky is falling, real estate's bad, this, that, and the other. Not true. Some places it is true, other places it's not. There's pockets and then there's good, there's bad areas, there's everything in between. What we're going to do is really break that down and help you understand that from our perspectives and what we do every day. And this is our strong suit.
And then we're going to give you the why.
We're going to give you the why. We're going to give you the who, what, when, where, why, all of it. We're going to give you the gears that turn the machine. And we will reverse engineer all that backwards so you understand start to finish really what makes this thing go and what, these numbers impacting those numbers and how that can impact your decision to buy or sell a home. And yeah, I mean, that's our business. That's not our podcast, but it is something that we need to do. And it's,
So next week, bring your notebook. Bring a
notebook. We will have lots of really great, robust information for you guys. That's all we have for today. If you like what you saw, hit the like button, hit that little bell, and follow us on YouTube. And
feel free to share it too, guys.
Yeah. Support us, please. We'd love it. And Pat Smith out.